Salutations everybody, it is Matty here today, and we just got an absolutely massive update on the future of CD Projekt Red this week. On Monday, when we did our Cyberpunk 2077 news update, we mentioned that there would be an investors relations financial call happening today, Thursday, and that we'd likely get some more information on the future of Cyberpunk, the future of Witcher, what's going on with these franchises. We have a lot of numbers to go through, but we also have some pretty surprising announcements for both these franchises that we need to talk about, including significant delays and pretty interesting timelines for when brand new content is going to land for both The Witcher as well as Cyberpunk 2077. Let's just say it's looking more and more like 2022 may be a quiet year for CD Projekt Red, and they may actually want that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into any CD Projekt Red news, especially Cyberpunk and The Witcher, as we talk about them a lot here on the channel, consider subscribing. Now, let's get into it, starting off with absolutely the big one. It was confirmed via their Twitter account after the investors relations call, where they write, as it was confirmed in CD Projekt Red's investor relations financial call moments ago, Cyberpunk 2077's upcoming expansion will arrive in 2023. Please stay tuned for more details coming later this year. Now, this won't be the only delay we speak about in this video. Fret not, there is another one, but this is a long way out now. We're only in April, and we're talking sometime in 2023. They didn't say early, middle, late 2023. Just we'll see you when we see you. That's good for Cyberpunk 2077, but we have to be really honest with ourselves for a moment here. We're looking at a game that launched in December of 2020, and we know it was broken, but the optics purely suggest that it'll be about 2.5 years by the time we get brand new Cyberpunk 2077 content. And I'm talking about expansion level content. Now, this doesn't mean leading up to the expansion, we don't get updates here or there with new quests, new quality of life enhancements. All that stuff will still likely arrive. But as we see deeper in the investors relations call, they're scaling Cyberpunk support very differently compared to other projects internally. Let me show you what I mean. In December of 2020, obviously around the launch of Cyberpunk, it was pretty much all hands on deck for support for Cyberpunk 2077 and its next-gen version. As you can see, that is marked in yellow. As the months go on, you can see it lessening and lessening and lessening to now February 2022, where the support for Cyberpunk and its next-gen version is a very small quadrant of the bar, and then the aqua blue quadrant for the Cyberpunk expansion is also very small. The largest part, however, is other projects, including the next game in the Witcher IP. So now, this is something they're reporting directly to their investors. They're not out, but this is not the priority anymore. They are moving on. And I can't imagine they're truly going to deliver on the promise that they mentioned before the game came out, where they said, we're going to deliver as much content as we did for The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3 came out in a pretty complete state, right? So they were able to hit the ground running and provide that extra content, provide those, I think it was 16 brand new quests for free in the first 2 weeks of launch. Like, do something that we really hadn't seen before, that was unprecedented in the games industry in 2015. But now you look at Cyberpunk again, where its first expansion will arrive sometime in 2023, and then you see the level of investment that they are talking to the people who are investing in their company, saying, this is where we're heading for the future. This is where our teams are at. This is how they're structured. This is the focus, and the focus is absolutely seemingly The Witcher for the future. Now, with that being said, is it possible things change up over time? Maybe this chart trends in the other direction as the Cyberpunk anime comes out this year, and we get closer to the release of the expansion. They start to move people off of, say, the upcoming Witcher game to Cyberpunk's expansion. That's possible, but right now, for me, from the outside looking in, this doesn't look good for the future of the game. They will still support it, but that support is going to take a while. And I know some people are just getting into Cyberpunk now. We can't ignore that. With the next-gen update, a lot of people said, all right, I'm hopping on board. I'm going to play finally. And so people are willing to wait a year. But that's where folks like myself, which there were about 14 million of us, I'll get into that number in a little bit, who played the game around the launch period and went, wow, that was great. Or many people, wow, that was awful. And for me, I was like, I want more. I want more of this game. And now people like myself are waiting 2.5 years. So I understand why some people who are playing it for the first time in this last month or so are willing to be patient with it. You're just playing it for the first time. So a year, not too bad. That would actually make sense in a general timeline of the release of the game. So again, this will be, I think, a mixed reception depending on who you are and when you played this game. Now, I mentioned 14 million of us playing it around the launch period. Where did that number exactly come from? Well, when the game released, we knew that it hit 8 million pre-orders before the game even came out, and it eventually pushed past 14 million sales. Not too bad for a really broken game at launch. Even if I thought it was absolutely amazing, it was still pretty busted. Since then, we have just learned in this investors relation call that they have sold 18 million copies of Cyberpunk 2077, a number that is absolutely staggering, but you can't help but look at that as CD Projekt Red and go, what would have been if we actually waited on this one and put out like a generation-defining game for many people? I thought it was one of the best RPGs of the generation, but my opinion is not definitive and speaks for everyone else out there. It's just how I personally felt in the AAA RPG space. However, that's not how many people felt. If they waited, they sat on it, and they delivered what was here in the next-gen update, I imagine at launch, a lot of people would have been really pleased with this game because the turnaround and conversation for this game has been pretty strong. There's been a lot of bounce back energy for this. People want Cyberpunk to succeed because, again, many people like this game. They just hate what happened to it. But again, 18 million copies sold, 4 million of those coming after a certain period of time, much after launch. So these are some pretty slow legs for a game that was supposed to be hitting around 30 million sales. They're way, way, way below projections on where this game was heading originally before launch. It was supposed to be a real showstopper. Like, it was supposed to be an Elden Ring type situation. Millions upon millions upon millions upon millions of sales, seemingly endless, a pit of money for CD Projekt Red to support the game with, to support new projects with, to take a new step forward with their company. That did not happen. So it paints a very interesting picture of where Cyberpunk is within this company. Now, they did confirm that this new expansion will have a brand new storyline. They didn't mention any type of new areas for us to explore. They said for everyone who's already walked the streets of Night City, we're working on further DLCs as well as on a major expansion featuring a new storyline. So again, what I said earlier still remains true. There will be new content within Night City, and I'm hoping that the expansion takes us somewhere brand new. That's the one way I could see this working out for them. But at the end of the day, I do think it's kind of sad news for the state of the game, and CD Projekt Red did it to themselves. However, this isn't the only delay in the video, sadly. We got to talk about The Witcher, which is mighty successful, may I add. They confirmed that this series has seen 65+ million copies sold, with 40+ million of those sales going to The Witcher 3. Now, The Witcher 3 came out, of course, in 2015. It's had a while to get to that point in time. I mentioned the projections for Cyberpunk with 30 million there. They were going to be speeding towards this milestone for the franchise in just one entry, the first entry, mind you. That's, again, got to really sting. But let's go off Cyberpunk for a little bit. Let's talk about The Witcher here. This series is a tremendous success. Of course, we know why. Beyond the games just being awesome, I love The Witcher 2. The Witcher 3 was fantastic. You also got to take a look at the Netflix series that really brought this series to the mainstream. Then you look at things like it being available on Game Pass for a long period of time. People were able to discover it there. This was just one of those lightning in a bottle moments for CD Projekt Red. Everything worked in their favor. And of course, it took great creatives to make that happen. A game like The Witcher 3 doesn't just happen. A show like The Witcher doesn't just magically become popular. It's got to be good, right? That's the core of it all, right? There are many factors that bring it to a new level. But I thought, while it was good, I didn't know it was 65 million good. However, what's not good is another delay. So they confirmed via the Witcher Twitter account, we have decided to have our in-house development team conduct the remaining work on the next-gen version of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. We are currently evaluating the scope of work to be done and thus have to postpone the Q2 release until further notice. We'll update you as soon as we can. Thank you for your understanding. I saw this, I made the mistake of going into the replies on something on Twitter, and I was really disappointed. Like, I typically just ignore that stuff, but there was a lot of garbage replies down there. Like, people making fun of CD Projekt Red for delaying another thing. And it was one of those moments where you understand the frustration. Like, with Cyberpunk, I think that's reasonable frustration because it's such a self-inflicted wound. But something like The Witcher, which we know and we have, and we know what happened when CD Projekt Red rushed something out very recently, why people were like antagonizing them, attacking them, really going after them. I get the frustration. I'm right there with you. I'm not one of those people in the industry that goes, every time a game's delayed, I put the Miyamoto quote about whatever shit he said many years ago. To me, it's like, yeah, I get it. Yes, the game will be better. We are still entitled to our frustration. But there's I hate to say it because, you know, I consider myself somewhat mature, but I still like fart jokes, right? So I can't be that mature. But hey, look, there was a staggering level of immaturity there where like people seemingly didn't handle it all that well. And that was disappointing because, again, I don't think they really needed to do a next-gen update for The Witcher 3. Like, it clearly has done very well. It will continue to sell. It got its biggest player count on Steam when it wasn't on a sale, when it wasn't doing any new content, when it wasn't doing any new expansions. It was when the show for The Witcher came out. So clearly they just have a great game sitting there that'll find its own audience because it's just one of those generational games. It's just that simple. So for me, I'm like, you don't really have to do this. I'm happy you're doing it. I'll happily replay that game because it's been a long while since I've done that. I'll happily go back to that, but I never really expected it in the first place. I'm curious, though, why they're taking it away from Saber Interactive, who was formerly working on it. They did an excellent job with the port for The Witcher 3, bringing it to the Switch, something that we all thought was impossible, and they did an amazing job with that. And actually thought it played well, looked pretty good. But, man, taking it away from them to bring it in-house, it looks like CD Projekt Red is really affirming to themselves, like, we're not screwing anything up for a long while. I think they understand the fragile state the company's in, that they can't miss ever again. You'd think that'd be it, right? Cyberpunk delay, Witcher delay. There's actually more here that occurred in this investor's call. So let's go back to that. They write that this was a year of pivotal internal changes where Red 2.0 is still in progress by building agile teams. They're building 2 independent teams to work on 2 AAA projects, and they are refocusing on staff well-being and giving priority to HR activities to make a much more healthy work environment. Furthermore, they talked a bit about the production plans for this year, which is working on the Cyberpunk expansion, working on the Witcher game in Unreal Engine 5, further supporting Cyberpunk, development on a next-gen version of The Witcher 3. All this we know so far. Then it gets interesting. Development work at the Molasses Flood on an unannounced project based on one of our franchises, so either Cyberpunk or The Witcher. Launch of a spin-off to Gwent, the Witcher card game. Further support of Gwent, the Witcher card game, and The Witcher Monster Slayer, that's the mobile spin-off, and conceptual and research work on unannounced projects. So it goes beyond The Witcher, it goes beyond Cyberpunk. They are, again, as I said with the Cyberpunk section of this video, clearly moving on to the next chapter, if you will. They're taking the next step forward. Cyberpunk is no longer the main focus. They just need to keep moving forward here at this point. They will continue to support it. But I'm curious, really more than anything, what the Molasses Flood is working on, right? Again, this is a indie team, if you will, set in Boston that was recently purchased by CD Projekt Red, and they make pretty cool looking games, but not the gritty type of games, the AAA level type of games you've seen from CD Projekt Red with The Witcher and Cyberpunk. And if they're making I would imagine, a spin-off game within these universes, I'm wondering which it is. Obviously, we saw how successful The Witcher is and how long it'll be until we get another Witcher game. In all fairness, I think the stopgap is that. What is the game between The Witcher 3 and The Witcher 4, we'll just call it for now, the Unreal Engine 5 Witcher project? What is the stopgap there? Maybe this is it, because I know Gwent is for a particular audience, Witcher Monster Slayer for a particular audience. I don't know if they're going to make another Thronebreaker game, but even that was for a particular audience. What do we do in between then and now for the Witcher series? That is where my predictions go. That is personally where I feel Molasses Flood could go, but I'd also love to be wrong and see more Cyberpunk. I still feel like this series, to me, it connected with me better. I like Cyberpunk as a universe much more. I'm a sci-fi geek. I love Star Wars, Fallout, all that stuff. It shouldn't come as much of a surprise that I prefer the sci-fi stuff over the fantasy stuff at this point in time. But for me, like, I would go all in on Cyberpunk still, because there's clearly a lot there that is untapped. But I'll be more than happy with more Witcher, because for me, I would love to get to that level of loving a fantasy IP as much as I love, say, a sci-fi IP. Outside of the Elder Scrolls. Elder Scrolls is goated, but we already know that. Anyway, that's everything I got for you in today's upload when it comes to Cyberpunk 2077, The Witcher, everything happening at CD Projekt Red. A really fascinating set of reveals here. New projects on the way, as we talked about earlier this week, but also lots of delays, lots and lots of delays. So Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Fire away. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.